Hello there. Today I'd like to talk about our study of SDG, which involve women education and poverty. This is the title of our study, a study of continuing education to prevent rural women from returning to poverty in China. Including me, our team has 8 members. We all come from China. We call ourselves from zero to hero. Here are our names and student numbers. Our study contained these 6 parts. In this first part, we briefly explained why and how we do the research and the long-term meaning of the study. Rural poverty-stricken women are still in a terrible situation as compared to the national average. Our study examined how rural poverty-stricken women can use 3 types of continuing education, including diversified knowledge education, practical skill training, and family education guidance, to enrich their stock of knowledge, enhance their ability to become wealthy, and improve parenting methods to break shackles of poverty. Based on this, we suggested the following 3 methods in our study. The second part is the background of the study. Over the past 40 years of reform and opening up, China's rural poverty has experienced anti-poverty practices of institutional reform, development-oriented poverty alleviation, and targeted poverty alleviation. Remarkable achievements have been made, and 750 million rural poor people have been successfully lifted out of poverty, making remarkable contributions to the world's anti-poverty theory and practice. However, nearly 2 million people out of poverty in China are still at risk of falling back into poverty, and nearly 3 million marginalized people are at a risk of falling into poverty. The situation is still grim. In-depth studies on the long-term mechanism for curbing poverty return and new measures to address new changes like poverty will help consolidate achievements in poverty alleviation, effectively link targeted poverty alleviation with rural revitalization, and better address the contradictions between inadequate and unbalanced development and the people's ever-growing needs for a better life. Although decisive achievements has been made in poverty alleviation, the phenomenon of returning to poverty has also attracted great attention. This chart shows the statistics from 2016 to 2019. It can be seen that the current movement-style poverty alleviation has caused some households out of poverty at the risk of returning to poverty at any time. The inducing factors of returning to poverty mainly involves policy factors, unexpected factors, backwards idea of poor households, lack of ability, and system defects. In rural areas, rural women are an important force in rural construction, but the educational equality of rural women in China cannot meet the needs of current social development. The rural women's continuing education will help rural women obtain the ability to get rich continuously, avoid returning to poverty, enhance the strength of rural construction, and promote rural and agricultural development. Statement of problem. We have 2 problems here. First, rural women in China have a higher risk of returning to poverty than men. The second is education aimed at rural women returning to poverty cannot adapt to the current situation. So here's our objectives. First, based on gender epistemology, marginalization theory, and statistics show that rural Chinese women are more likely than males to return to poverty. Second, based on the theoretical framework of cultural capital, starting from the physical form of cultural capital, objective form of cultural capital, and institutionalized form of cultural capital, in-depth interviews with 38 rural women who have escaped from poverty to reduce the risk of Chinese rural women returning to poverty. This is a general chart shows the methodology of our study. We mainly use document analysis, depth interview, and data analysis. Our research questions in this article are mainly carried out under the guidance of social gender theoretical framework, and the research on the marginalization of women is mainly carried out based on the perspective of constructivism, gender role theory, and gender role stereotypes. Based on the principle of proper sampling, this research adopted the in-depth interview methods and selected 38 representative rural women who have been lifted out of poverty from Chixi village in Fujian province. And this research tends to solve how to break the yoke of the relative poverty of knowledge, get rid of the trap of relative poverty of skills, and eliminate relative poverty of education by studying the effect mechanism interacted by three forms of cultural capital. At the same time, through the official statistic of the Chinese government website, the current situation of rural women in China is obtained, which further proves their high risk of returning to poverty. Okay, the next part is literature review based on CNKI, Google Scholar, and other domestic and foreign databases as data resources. This research sorted out research literature related to women returning to poverty, rural women returning to poverty, and returning to poverty and continuing education. The research on the current situation of rural female poverty mainly includes the following aspects: the typological study of rural female poverty, study of rural spiritual and cultural poverty, research on the development status of female population quality in poor areas. The causes of a rural female poverty: first, rural women's spiritual and cultural poverty; second, insufficient investment in education; third, the impact of social structure. Strategic suggestions and poverty alleviation passes for rural women. Firstly, increase investment in human capital. Secondly, the improvement of the legal system and social security system. Thirdly, the change of ideology and culture. Lastly, anti-poverty from the perspective of social support. Studies abroad, including two parts. First, theoretical research based on the perspectives of manpower, culture, and concepts. Second, practical research on poverty alleviation through education abroad. In conclusion, judging from the current research results, more content focuses on the practice and current progress of educational poverty alleviation and the exploration of future development trends of educational poverty alleviation is the next frontier issue that academia needs to study urgently. There is a lack of research on special poverty groups such as rural women, especially after China has completely eliminated absolute poverty. Poverty alleviation will face a strategic transformation and enter a period of relative poverty and prevention of returning to poverty. Due to the time limitation, we wrote down the references here, and I'm not going to read for you. That's all for our presentation. Thank you for your listening.